From the legendary warlord Boonta to the infamous gangster Jabba, the notorious and repulsive Hutts strike fear into the hearts of the galaxy's most hardened criminals. Their longevity is incredible because they've outlasted the Sith Empire, the Old Republic, and the Galactic Empire, thriving in the process. But how did the Hutts achieve their power and, most importantly, hold on to it? In my research, I identified the following 8 key reasons why these slug-like beings became one of the galaxy's apex species, and why even Emperor Palpatine opted against messing with them. One of the most crucial aspects of the Hutts' power is their incredible biological engineering. From a human perspective, they may not look like much, but they are apex beings. Their longevity is a crucial factor because it enables them to outlive governments and rivals, even if they aren't responsible for destroying them. They can make long-term investments and deals that last for generations. The iconic Jabba was already 600 years old during the events of Return of the Jedi. It's common for Hutts to live for centuries, with some even surpassing 1,000 years old. According to the current canon, Hutts are in their prime between 200 and 800 years old. This incredible longevity allows them to accumulate massive wealth through both legitimate and black market activities. Don't underestimate the former. Saving just 100 credits at 5% for 200 years generates 350 million credits. The Hutts could gain tremendous wealth without doing anything illegal if they wanted to. It's extremely difficult for rival species to compete with them. Common criminal species like humans, Twi'leks, Dathomirians, and Rodians have comparably short lifespans. Hutts also don't depend on heirs in the short term because they live for so long. Also, unlike other species, Hutts don't physically decline as they age. Instead, they grow increasingly large and their skin becomes harder, so it's very difficult to cause them physical harm. Their status increases too, usually ensuring a key role on the Grand Hutt Council. According to legends, the Hutts originally hail from the mysterious planet Varl, where they emerged as a warrior people. They dominated their sector, subduing and enslaving species like the Klatooinians, the Nikto, and the Vadrans. The Hutts forced them to sign the Treaty of Vontor in 25,000 BBY, ruthlessly binding their races to eternal servitude. Later, during the events known as the Hutt Cataclysm, they fled to the nearby planet of Nal Hutta, which they adopted as their new homeworld. Originally a lush jungle planet, the planet became heavily polluted because of the in-canon Drengir crisis during the High Republic era. The Hutts exploited this and effectively re-engineered the planet to suit their biological needs, transforming it into a humid world of muddy bogs and swamps. The Hutts play the long game. Many beings made the fatal mistake of underestimating the Hutts. However, don't be fooled by the bloated appearance of decadent gangsters like Jabba or Gardulla. Contrary to common belief, Hutts are also exceptionally strong. Ancient warlord Hutts were more lean and snake-like than their crime lord descendants, who revel in their obesity as a status symbol. All Hutts are capable of explosive bursts of movement and possess surprising strength. Their whip-like tails are one of their most devastating weapons. The lightsaber necklace-wearing Gracchus Jahibakti Tingi is one of the most extreme examples of a physically strong Hutt in the canon universe. He was one of the most active Hutts, even using 12 cybernetic legs to enhance his mobility, instead of depending on slave carriers like the twins or Jabba. Even his appearance radiated his capacity for brutal strength compared to obese compatriots like Gardulla and Vaga. Jakku's criminal overlord Niima is the ultimate example of a physically powerful Hutt. First appearing in the canon novel Aftermath: Empire's End, she provided one of the most dramatic moments of Hutt physicality. Niima upended an Imperial Lambda-class shuttle as it attempted to take off during the Battle of Jakku. This is a terrifying image to imagine. Meanwhile, in both canon and legends, Hutts have demonstrated their capacity to endure severe trauma. Niima also withstood several blaster bolts during the Battle of Jakku, proving that Hutts are insanely durable. The Hutt's slimy skin is remarkably thick and strong, even protecting them from blaster bolts. However, they hate sunshine because it dries them out. Usually it takes an anti-tank weapon or explosives to inflict severe damage on a Hutt. Jabba remained unfazed by Leia's intervention as the bounty hunter Boushh until she produced a thermal detonator. They do have vulnerable points, but it's unusual for assassins to get close enough to take advantage of them. Legends took this even further, with one Hutt, Gargon, even showing regenerative capabilities. He lost half of his head during an assault, including an eye and part of his brain, but slowly regrew it. Gargon only featured twice in Marvel Comics 17 and 18, but it proves how hard it is to kill a Hutt. One glaring exception is when Snoodles dispatches her former lover Zero the Hutt with a single blaster shot. However, one popular theory suggests that their romantic story and Zero's broken heart contributed to this inconsistency. His early death is very much an anomaly. It's usually incredibly difficult to kill a Hutt, even if you get close enough to one. In Episode 6, Princess Leia successfully strangles Jabba with his own chain. However, there were mitigating circumstances. She caught the massively obese Hutt off guard during a firefight. A Hutt's neck area is more vulnerable because their thick dorsal skin doesn't cover it. In normal circumstances, she'd never have had time to choke him without his bodyguards intervening. Hutts also possess 3 lungs, allowing them to fuel their massive bodies and metabolism. This enables them to stay submerged underwater for long periods and to cope and even enjoy toxic environments like Nal Hutta or Nar Shaddaa. Meanwhile, in Legends, it's exceptionally difficult to poison a Hutt because of their biochemistry. In Tales from Jabba's Palace, Gartog the Gamorrean guard accidentally brings a poisoned meal to his boss. However, Jabba only falls mildly ill before recovering. The grudge-holding Hutts are extremely challenging to kill and live for centuries, so it's not a good idea to get on their bad side. The Hutts' incredible wealth is one of the main reasons why they became one of the galaxy's most powerful forces. According to Legends, the Hutts were one of the first species to develop and effectively use hyperspace technology. The Essential Atlas reveals that they seized it after the collapse of the Rakata. This was a game-changer for the canny Hutts because it enabled them to conquer their sector, carving out a criminal empire in their corner of the galaxy. The Hutt clans, or kajjidics, focused on controlling trades and commerce rather than mere military conquest. After conquering the Klatooinians, Nikto, and Valdrins, they had huge slave armies that they could use for labor and warfare. Slavery was central because it gave them an enormous workforce that allowed them to dominate the Outer Rim in every economic activity, from mining to agricultural production. The Hutts were able to rapidly expand their empire because they didn't have to worry about paying salaries for all their enslaved laborers. Slavery further fueled their black market activities, including spice mining, smuggling, and even entertainment with gladiator fights. Hutts created an enormous ecosystem that ultimately depended on their money. This is why Huttese became the lingua franca of the Outer Rim, not basic. Meanwhile, different kajjidics used their resources in different specialized ways. Jabba's clan, the Dasilagic Kajjidic, took control of planets like Tatooine and Nar Shaddaa through debt-based economic domination, bribery, and corruption. It was almost impossible to resist his influence on these worlds because the Hutts controlled the key population centers. It's no wonder that Mos Eisley became a wretched hive of scum and villainy. Jabba also funded festivals like the Boonta Eve pod race in The Phantom Menace. Another interesting example is the Gorinsla Kajjidic that operated in Legends during the same era as Jabba. This clan focused on illicit entertainment activities. They grew gambling empires through their casinos and ran spice dens and pod races. Smaller Kajjidics would be even more narrowly focused. In the Legends novel Darksaber, Durga the Hutt was the leader of the Basadi Kajjidic. His interests were more corporate and industrial, using his wealth in chemical plants and droid factories. He even invested in R&D, developing the Darksaber superweapon. However, in true Hutt fashion, Durga didn't want to simply take over the galaxy, but rather to intimidate and dominate rival clans, while deterring the Republic from interfering in his criminal empire. His aspirations remained consistent with Hutt norms, even if his methodology went too far. The Hutts built up massive wealth and forced other criminal entities and syndicates into economic dependency. Their staggering resources also made it nearly impossible for other gangs to challenge them. The Pikes, the Exchange, and Black Sun were some powerful underworld organizations in Legends and canon who cooperated with or even served the Hutts at various points. Hutts tolerated other criminal organizations as long as they were useful and didn't directly challenge Hutt interest. In Shadows of the Empire, Jabba used his immense wealth to pay off Black Sun's sub-bosses to switch ties and sabotage operations when it proved useful to him. Hutts could also raise tariffs and demand crippling security fees that were effectively a shakedown, while also poaching clients. There wasn't much that rivals could do short of an assassination attempt. As we've established, Hutts are incredibly difficult to kill, so this is usually a bad idea. Their final resources gave them access to the most skilled bounty hunters in the galaxy. Cad Bane, Boba Fett, Bossk, and Dengar are some of the most notorious hunters who worked for Jabba and other Hutt crime lords. Their economic muscle also helps them to secure their palaces against external threats with hired muscle, security droids, and impenetrable walls. Hutts can hire the best in the business, so it was almost impossible to go up against them without an army. That's why even the galaxy's most dominant political entities, like the Old Republic and the Galactic Empire, opted to leave them alone. This video has already mentioned the kajjidic system, but it's essential to understand how it helped the Hutts become one of the galaxy's most powerful and enduring entities. Historically, the Hutts' most dangerous threat has always been themselves. According to legends, they almost wiped each other out during the Hutt cataclysms. This was a horrific civil war that saw rival clans go head-to-head around 15,000 BBY. It devastated their homeworld of Varl and left other planets in the system barren, desolate wastelands. This was the closest that the entire species came to destruction. The Hutts may be repulsive and amoral, but they're not stupid. They recognized that their very survival was at stake and created an effective solution. The Hutts established a council of elders that, in turn, created the kajjidic system. This was more than just a simple division of power amongst the clans. The kajjidic system is a philosophy that defined Hutt culture and relations for thousands of years, establishing them as one of the galaxy's most powerful and irrepressible forces. According to the Legends comic book series, Star Wars Republic, kajjidic literally means someone's gotta have it, so why not us? The Hutts did not see the benefit in power for power's sake. Instead, they focus on ruthlessly pursuing their economic goals through whatever means necessary. Hutts identify wealth as power in its purest form, with assets more important than claiming vast resource-dry territories. They had contempt for other species, seeing themselves as superior beings. For example, the Plagueis novel suggests that Jabba can actually speak accented Basic, but simply opts not to because he thinks it's beneath him. Zero is the only canon example of a Hutt who actually chooses to speak Basic. However, there are other cases in Legends, including Gardulla, Mika, and the notorious Beldorian the Splendid. Each kajjidic is essentially a syndicate consisting of a ruling Hutt clan and their vassal slaves, gangs, pirate armies, and business empire. A single Hutt lord ruled as kajjidi or lorda. Jabba was the kajjidi of the Dasiligic kajjidic, while before the Clone Wars, Gardulla ruled the rival Basadi clan. The Grand Hutt Council on Nal Hutta was the ultimate power when it came to deciding the strategic interest of the Hutts as a people. Their first in-canon appearance came in the Clone Wars. The Grand Hutt Council served as arbitrators when there were grievances between Hutt kajjidics. Their decisions were final, and they ruthlessly suppressed defiance. While the Hutts are incredibly selfish individuals, they're capable of remarkable pragmatism. There are examples in both canon and legends where they punished Hutts who went too far in their pursuit of power. For example, they decided to capture Zero because he's possessed information that was dangerous to the Council. Meanwhile, Durga's antics and Darksaber were an existential threat to the entire Hutt way of life for millennia. Nonetheless, it's perfectly acceptable within Hutt culture to backstab, undermine, and even attempt to assassinate each other. In the Clone Wars movie, Zero conspires with Count Dooku to kidnap Jabba's son Rada to weaken his position on the Grand Hutt Council. Zero took it too far by working against the entire council at once. However, there are many other examples of Hutts sabotaging and scheming. Marlowe also plotted against his fellow council members during the Clone Wars, albeit in a more subtle manner. Jabba had a strong rivalry with Gardulla Basadi the Elder during the Phantom Menace. According to some legend stories, an unnamed opponent, heavily implied to be Jabba, hired Jango Fett to take her down. Ultimately, she's eaten by a krayt dragon. However, this is not confirmed in canon yet. Hutts have no hesitation in taking advantage of each other's weaknesses. However, when the species faces an external threat, they put their grievances to one side and show remarkable solidarity. This ability is one of the secrets to their long-term survival in a dangerous galaxy. The Hutt's unique value system gives them a different perspective on power compared to most other species. They're not expansionists for the sake of it. While they do want to grow their material assets, they're not interested in conquering worlds just to increase territory. They also maintain a strategic neutrality that has helped them maintain their power and avoid confrontation with the galaxy's dominant political forces. The Hutts are content to stay in control of their corner of the galaxy. Their domination of the Outer Rim forced the Old Republic, the Empire, and the New Republic to tolerate their presence. Hutts rarely take up arms, with a few notable exceptions. In Legends, Cossack the Hutt led his slave armies against Zim the Despot at the Third Battle of Vontor. This victory was a defining moment for the Hutt clans because it effectively gave them uninhibited control of the Outer Rim territories. They only take mass military action if their survival is at stake, instead preferring to manipulate and extort their opponents into submission. This was also why the Hutt Grand Council abhorred Durga's Darksaber scheme in Legends. They feared that it would force the New Republic into pursuing a focused military campaign against them. His actions would potentially disrupt a system that had worked smoothly for literal millennia, and leave Hutt society irrevocably devastated. The pragmatic Hutts recognized that neutrality was a mutually beneficial arrangement. Hutt space was home to chaotic planets and species that threatened the rule of law across the galaxy. The Hutts ruled over these with an iron hand, exercising their brutal brand of justice to keep order. Hutt domination in the Outer Rim was savage, but it was also predictable. The Republic, and later the Empire, accepted that it was a containment strategy that didn't cost them anything. In turn, the Hutts controlled many of the galaxy's hyperspace corridors. Any attempt to extort or confront the Hutts would be a political and economic disaster. Also, these governments contained many corrupt politicians and planetary bureaucrats potentially on Hutt payrolls. The Republic recognized this during the Clone Wars and even negotiated a treaty with the Crime Lords. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Padme Amidala negotiated with Jabba to guarantee Hutt neutrality during the conflict with the promise of keeping the Clone Wars out of Hutt territory. It gave the Grand Army of the Republic access to Hutt hyperspace routes, but had effects they didn't expect. In turn, the Hutts received access to core worlds. Most significantly, the Republic inadvertently legitimized the Hutts as a legal and sovereign entity, which was far more valuable to them. Taking on the Hutts was also more trouble than it's worth. We've already talked about their wealth. The combined resources of the kajjidics were the second most powerful entity in the galaxy for most of their existence. If necessary, they could throw slave armies, pirate fleets, and mercenaries at their foes with a devastating effect. Even the Emperor recognized this, opting to maintain the status quo when he overthrew the Republic. Yes, the Empire could likely have crushed the Hutts if it really wanted to, but it would have been painful and very destabilizing. The Emperor craved order, and he didn't want to deal with roaming pirates or a refugee crisis. There was even the chance that the Hutts could ally with the rebellion, which would be far more dangerous. This would give them unimpeded access to Hutt space and assets when the rebellion was struggling to secure enough weapons and starfighters. Instead, Palpatine understood that it was better to allow criminals to rule criminals. Again, it was mutually beneficial. The Hutts were a useful source of intelligence and could provide services that the Empire couldn't officially do. Smuggling, piracy, and open slavery were all acceptable in Hutt society. The Empire at least tried to maintain the facade of civilization on the surface. Palpatine knew that they'd never challenge him directly and that they only cared about profit. Again, the Hutts' lack of ambition to rule the galaxy ironically preserved their power. In Legends, they do go into decline in the decade after Jabba's fall, but there's no questioning their political savviness. One of the most unique and underrated aspects of Hutt power is their capacity to resist the Force. The Hutts possess remarkable mental resilience that makes them almost immune to manipulation. The most obvious example of this in canon is when Luke Skywalker enters Jabba's throne room in Return of the Jedi. First, he manipulates the hapless Bib Fortuna with a mind trick before confronting Jabba himself. When he attempts another mind trick on the Hutt Lord, Jabba simply laughs it off with the immortal words, "Your mind tricks won't work on me, boy." However, this isn't the first time that a Jedi recognizes Hutt mental strength, with Obi-Wan also alluding to it in A New Hope. Jedi will also commonly attempt to use the Force to read emotions. Again, this is very difficult to do with a Hutt. Zero provides one of the clearest examples of this during the Clone Wars. His flamboyance and erratic behavior are deceptive because he refuses to submit to Force pressure or Jedi threats. The Legends text, Jedi vs. Sith, The Essential Guide to the Force, makes this even more explicit. This book reveals that it's notoriously difficult, if not impossible, for Jedi to influence Hutts through the Force. During the Black Fleet Crisis, Durga the Hutt faces dark-side practitioners without suffering mental domination. Princess Leia also acknowledges his mental resistance when she visits Nal Hutta with Han Solo and Darksaber. The implications of this are remarkable. Hutts aren't the only beings in the galaxy with a resistance to the Force. Canon also points toward the Toydarians and the Geonosians, but it's an invaluable asset when combined with their massive wealth, their longevity, and ruthlessness. External powers can't easily manipulate them and must depend on sheer diplomatic skill. The Republic wouldn't have so readily accepted Jabba's treaty conditions during the Clone Wars if Obi-Wan could have used the Force to pressure him. This is also why Darth Sidious never attempted to dominate the Hutts, as he deviously schemed to bring down the Jedi Order. He understood that they would resist his dark side powers, so it would be a counterproductive strategy. The Galaxy of Fear Legends series set a precedent for this. In 1997's Army of Terror, Corda the Hutt resists dark-side-induced psychological terror, remaining composed while his cronies panic. He remains unruffled despite terrifying phenomena occurring around him. Neither light nor dark side practitioners are capable of overwhelming the Hutts with their Force powers. However, it's crucial to note that this works both ways. The Hutts are also almost completely incompatible with being a Force practitioner, never mind a trained Jedi. There's only a single example of a Hutt Jedi in both Legends and canon lore. The extremely polarizing Beldorian the Splendid only actively appears in one novel, 1997's Planet of Twilight. His combination of Hutt mental resilience and his Jedi training made his willpower unbelievably strong, but more on him later. The Hutt's natural Force resistance prevented them from succumbing to mental domination. It's easy to see how this helped them to preserve their power and their criminal empire. It forced political opponents and business rivals to depend on conventional methods to negotiate or disrupt Hutt affairs. We've already talked about how difficult it is to kill or even hurt a Hutt. Their physiognomy also helped them because they had very slow metabolisms and nervous systems. It also makes them harder to assassinate using the Force. Darth Vader's Force choke would work on a Hutt, but it would take more effort than with another species. Jedi vs. Sith, the essential guide to the Force, also supports this, stating that they're not immune to telekinetic crushing effects, but are more resistant. This gives them a spectacular advantage in a galaxy where Force users often wield decisive influence at crucial moments. It's easy to label Hutts as evil, but this is far too simplistic. Instead, it's more accurate to say that they're almost entirely lacking in empathy. This isn't out of pure malice, but because of their biology. Their slow nervous system almost prevents them from being capable of spontaneous empathy as a species. However, while there are many cases of them committing acts of savage brutality, it's not because they're sadistic. Usually, they're entirely detached and insensitive. This is why emotional appeals don't work on them, nor visible suffering. Their lack of empathy, combined with their ruthless cultural conditioning, is extremely effective in the pursuit of power. Putting it simply, the Hutts have no remorse or hesitation in making decisions that other political entities or organizations won't. They forced entire species into slavery for millennia because it was advantageous to them. Meanwhile, slavery is an accepted practice throughout the Outer Rim on worlds like Tatooine and Nar Shaddaa. That's why Qui-Gon Jinn can't simply free Shmi and Anakin Skywalker in The Phantom Menace. He knows that it'll be futile in a society that condones it, and he would face the wrath of the Hutts for his disruption. Qui-Gon recognizes the power of the Hutts, threatening Watto with their wrath if he doesn't meet the terms of their bet. Their remorseless use of slavery provides a horrific advantage. Yes, the Empire forced many species into slavery, including the Wookiees and the Mon Calamari, but they at least pretended that it was justified or labeled it as indentured servitude, because they wanted to maintain an image of being civilized. The Hutts don't care enough to even this, and that's a key part of why they're so powerful. Their amorality also makes them very unpredictable. There are so many cases of this in canon and legends. Jabba cruelly drops poor Ula the Twilight Dancing Girl into his Rancor pit because she refuses his advances. In Tales from Jabba's Palace, Salacious Crumb must make his master laugh each day or face being eaten. Durga electrocutes his trapped Darksaber crew in their chairs if they displease him. He even accidentally presses the wrong button, killing the wrong person as he casually dishes out punishments. His reaction is to tell his intended victim, "Well, let that be a lesson to you then." Hutts use cruelty as a tool in a myriad of ways. It's common for them to organize gladiatorial fights with captives pitted against each other or wild animals. This entertains their minions, but it's also an opportunity for them to flaunt their power in a visible display. Luke Skywalker took down Jabba's Rancor, but he also fought Gracchus's menagerie. This behavior was intentional, because it unsettled business partners and opponents. They would be less likely to betray a Hutt if they knew that they'd instantly face lethal retribution. Time and again, Hutts have proved they will make ruthless decisions without hesitation if it benefits them. Zero shows no reaction when Cad Bane coldly disposes of Republic guards during his escape because he doesn't regard their lives as significant. In Legends, Eric the Hutt ordered the assassination of his rivals. Durga is perhaps the most extreme example because he poisoned his own father. Then he tried to develop the Darksaber superweapon to extort and dominate his rivals, knowing it would kill millions. There are a few cases of empathetic Hutts in Legends, but very few in canon. Hutt society, cultural norms, and physical development quickly condition their young to lose this sensitivity. Jabba shows his feelings in the most Hutt way possible when his son Rata is kidnapped in the Clone Wars movie. He threatens war to bring Rata back and is even sincere in his thanks to the Jedi for returning him. But while he does display affection, it's also transactional. Hutts rarely reproduce, so Rata is a long-term asset for his empire and the future of his kajjidic. One of the most curious examples of an empathetic adult Hutt is Mika in A.C. Crispin's Han Solo trilogy. Bizarrely, Mika is everything we don't expect from a Hutt. He's kind, opposed to violence and slavery, and even befriends humans, speaking basic for their convenience. This is completely incompatible with standard Hutt norms. Spoiler alert, he's brutally murdered because he's too soft for Hutt society and regarded as a freak. Perhaps we shouldn't be surprised because some things don't change. Even Beldorian, the only Hutt Jedi in the entire Star Wars lore, ultimately can't rise above his nature. He fell to the dark side on a Jedi mission to Nam Chorios, where he became a brutal dictator. The Force augmented Beldorian's natural physical and mental strength, a terrifying combination. In the end, even Jedi training couldn't suppress his natural Hutt ego and sense of superiority. The Hutts lack morality in almost every aspect of their society except for one. A deal with a Hutt is expected to be honored. This might seem surprising in a culture that thinks nothing of assassinating and undermining each other, however, it relates to their longevity. They live for centuries, so it's essential to maintain a trustworthy business reputation. Credits are the main currency in Hutt space, but deals and debts are of equal importance. This is why top bounty hunters like Boba Fett and Cad Bane regularly work for the Hutts. They know that they'll always pay on time and honor a deal. Hutts may attempt to renegotiate a contract or manipulate loopholes, but they'll never outright refuse to honor a debt. Jabba took this to the extreme when he negotiated with the Republic after Rata's kidnapping. True to his word, he gave them access to Hutt hyperspace lanes after his return. Yes, he took advantage of the deal, but he followed through on his side. Even the unusually power-hungry Durga maintained deals with Black Sun and the Empire because the perception of trustworthiness was so crucial to Hutt society. Hutts understand that economies depend on predictable behavior. That's why they react with near-immediate ruthlessness when a debt remains unpaid. They would instantly hire a bounty hunter to capture the perpetrator, dead or alive. Capture resulted in a brutal punishment that depended on the extremity of the grievance. Some Hutts, including Jabba and Gracchus, forced them into gladiator fights or fed them to monsters like the Rancor or Sarlacc. Lifelong slavery or servitude in the spice mines of Kessel or an equally unpleasant environment was also common. A clean death was almost the best outcome. Jabba is unusually generous to Han Solo after the young smuggler dumped a spice cargo to avoid Imperial boarding. This cost Jabba a fortune and exposed him to Imperial scrutiny. However, Jabba recognized that Solo is more profitable alive and flying for him rather than executing him. The pragmatic Hutt gives Solo every chance of repaying him, even after Greedo attempts to shoot him, because he appreciates his talent and his confidence. He offers him more time for an extra 20%. If Han were anyone else, Jabba would likely have him killed immediately. He showed rare leniency toward him, but that's also why he delivered such an exceptionally cruel punishment. He put a contract on Solo as a last resort because he had to make an example out of him. Freezing him permanently in carbonite is a harrowing punishment and a fate worse than death, but this shows the extent to which Jabba felt betrayed. Justice is brutal but consistent within the echelons of Hutt society. Inter-kajjidic treaties were regarded as law, and it was almost unheard of to break or defy them. Deviant Hutts could expect harsh retribution if they stepped out of line, with Zero a prime example. However, this brand of justice, harsh as it was, helped the Hutts maintain order in their unforgiving society. Their capacity for violent retribution was one of the key reasons behind their empire and why they maintained power for so long.